Rick Ross has built a $150 million empire with restaurants, luxury cars, a private jet, and some of the biggest properties in America. But nothing compares to what he owns in Georgia, where Ross has bought so much land that he's practically built a town of his own. Let me break it down. Fayetteville, Georgia sits about 30 minutes south of downtown Atlanta, the kind of quiet, Fayette County suburb known for big lots and good schools. In the middle of it sits an estate that locals just call the Promised Land, and it belongs to Rick Ross. The story of how he got it starts with somebody else's money and somebody else's downfall. Evander Holyfield, the heavyweight boxing champion, spent years and tens of millions of dollars building his dream house on that land. Holyfield built the mansion from 1994 to 1999 using tens of millions to construct it after his big matches, including winning against Mike Tyson's ear bite, and named it Villa Vittoriosa, Italian for victory. It was supposed to be his monument. Instead, it became a warning about what happens when a fortune outruns its owner. By 2012, Holyfield couldn't hold on to it anymore. He had to forfeit the home in 2012 due to financial issues. The house sat empty for 2 years, a 45,000 to 54,000 square foot ghost of a boxing champion's glory days, waiting for someone with the cash and the ambition to take it over. That someone turned out to be a rapper from Carroll City, who built his name rhyming about being the boss. In 2014, Rick Ross stepped in and bought the place for a fraction of what it cost to build. In 2014, after sitting unused for 2 years, Rick Ross purchased the home for just $5.8 million, a bargain considering the home was built for $30 million. That's not a typo. He got a house that cost $30 million to build for under $6 million because nobody else wanted to touch a foreclosed mansion in rural Georgia. What he got for that price is almost hard to picture unless you've seen the drone footage. This isn't a house, it's a small town disguised as a private residence. We're talking 45,000 to 54,000 square feet with 109 rooms inside. Some breakdowns put the room count even higher when you factor in every wing and outbuilding, but even at the conservative estimate, you're looking at more rooms than most hotels. The mansion spans over 45,000 square feet with 109 rooms, including 12 bedrooms and 21 bathrooms. Then there's the pool. Not a pool. The pool. Multiple sources describing the estate point to a swimming pool so large it's been called one of the biggest residential pools in the country, sitting alongside a 350,000-gallon pool and a private zoo on the property. A private zoo on a residential lot. That's the scale we're talking about. And the land itself kept growing. Ross didn't stop at whatever acreage came with the original purchase. In 2020, he went out and bought the property next door specifically to expand what he already had. Rick Ross seems to be following Kanye West's Wyoming blueprint because he just scooped up a huge chunk of property to expand his promised land in Georgia. The rapper dropped $1 million to become the proud new owner of 87 acres in Fayetteville, GA, not far from the multi-million-dollar mansion he calls home. That parcel came with its own structures already standing. Da Boss's large plot of land, located about 20 miles outside of Atlanta, comes with 2 houses on the property that could be renovated for Rick to live in, or could be used as rentals. Add the original acreage to that expansion, and you get a footprint that some estimates now put well past 300 acres. Because having 235 acres wasn't quite enough, he later added another 87 acres next door. Other write-ups covering the estate's current scale describe it as a 322-acre property, transformed into a high-revenue business hub that's larger than some actual towns you drive through without noticing. It's the kind of number that makes the "he owns a whole town" idea feel less like an exaggeration and more like a rounding error. Even the address carries his fingerprint on history. The road leading up to the gates is literally named after the man Ross bought the house from. His home is located at 794 Evander Holyfield Highway, Fayetteville, GA, 30,214. That's right. The street is named after the former owner. So every time a delivery driver, a contractor, or a tour bus full of curious fans types that address into GPS, they're typing in a piece of boxing history to reach a rap empire. Once he had the keys, Ross didn't treat it like a trophy to look at from a distance. He moved his whole operation into it. Rick Ross's primary home and current residence is the Promised Land in Fayetteville, Georgia. It is where he spends the majority of his time, where he makes his music, sets up his annual car and motorcycle show, and conducts his business. This is not a weekend house. This is headquarters. Hollywood noticed early too. Within a year of buying it, the estate was already doubling as a movie set. Last year, Ross opened up his mega estate to Hollywood for producers to film. The highly anticipated Coming to America sequel starring Eddie Murphy. That's the kind of thing that happens when your backyard looks like a European palace. Transplanted into rural Georgia, production companies start calling, and the renovations haven't stopped. Even now, Ross keeps sinking money back into the place, chasing details most homeowners would never even think about. As of 2026, he is still undergoing renovations, such as the $5 million Italian porcelain flooring. $5 million on flooring. That's not upkeep. That's a man treating his house like a permanent construction project designed to outdo itself every year. All of that spending has actually paid off on paper. What he bought for under $6 million is now valued at a completely different number. Ross bought it in 2014 for $5.8 million from boxing legend Evander Holyfield, who lost it to foreclosure today. It's worth an estimated $35 million, thanks to Ross's upgrades and its fame. That's roughly a six-fold jump in value in about a decade. And that's before you even count the acreage he tacked on next door. So by the time you stack the mansion, the added land, the movie deals, the private zoo, and the multi-million-dollar floor tiles together, you're not looking at a celebrity house anymore. You're looking at a self-contained operation with its own roads, its own name, and its own gravitational pull on the surrounding county. And that's just the real estate. The rest of the empire runs on wings, burgers, and jet fuel, and that's where the story goes next. If the mansion is the crown jewel, the restaurants are the engine room. This is the part of Ross's empire that doesn't get filmed for movies or shown off on Instagram nearly as much, but it's the part that quietly pays the bills every single day, whether or not he drops an album that year. It started with wings, specifically lemon pepper wings, which Ross has talked about loving for years, before he ever thought about owning the restaurant that sells them. A longtime fan of Wingstop's lemon pepper wings, Ross bought his first franchise in 2011 and has had as many as 30 restaurants. That's not a celebrity slapping his name on a building he never visits. That's a guy who liked the food enough to buy the company that makes it over and over, location after location. The growth from there was steady and, frankly, kind of relentless. By the mid-2010s, he already had a real business, not a side hustle. His venture in his Wingstop company brought in $7 million in 2014, and he kept adding locations from there, expanding a footprint that stretched across state lines. Perhaps Ross's most well-known business venture is his ownership of supposedly 30 Wingstop locations around the country. Rick Ross is listed as the owner of Boss Wings Enterprises LLC, along with his mother and sister, and the boss opened his first Wingstop location over 10 years ago. Notice that detail. His mother and sister are listed on the ownership structure too. This wasn't just Ross building a business for himself. He built something his own family runs alongside him. In interviews, he has repeatedly stated that he ensured that his family members were placed in a position to assist in the running of these businesses, and in the process he created generational wealth. The empire isn't a solo trophy case, it's a family payroll. He even passed a piece of it down to the next generation directly. Ross also gifted one of his Wingstop locations to his son for his 16th birthday. Most 16-year-olds get a car for their birthday. Ross's kid got a cash-flowing business. Current counts on exactly how many Wingstop locations Ross holds shift, depending on who's reporting it and when. Some pin the number at around 25, others closer to 30. Rick Ross currently owns 25 plus Wingstop franchises. Other reporting from 2026 lands on a similar range while noting the overall revenue picture. His Wingstop empire now encompasses over 30 franchise locations nationwide, generating an estimated $7.10 million in annual revenue. Either way you slice it, it's a real ongoing income stream that doesn't depend on radio play or streaming numbers. Ross himself has talked about why he got into it in the first place, and it wasn't just about liking chicken wings. He's described the growth of the business as something the community pushed forward as much as he did. He told Forbes he just wanted it to be something, and the business just grew. The community really came out, supported it, and showed a lot of love, with the energy always being fun and youthful, and his favorite lemon pepper wings in the world being a natural attraction. But Wingstop was only the opening move. A few years into building that side of the business, Ross went looking for a second fast food chain to add to the portfolio, and this one had a more personal connection to his own childhood. In 2016, the rapper announced his interest in partnering with Checkers and Rally's, and a year later, Ross opened his first Checkers and Rally's franchise in Miami. The reason he picked that specific chain wasn't random branding. It went back to where he actually grew up and the jobs he worked as a teenager. Reports on his early life note he once worked at a car wash near a Checkers he used to frequent, and later became the proprietor of a Checkers restaurant he used to regularly visit as a teenager. Where he once worked at a car wash, that's a straight line from a broke teenager hanging around a fast food parking lot to an adult who owns the building, and he's been explicit about the motivation behind pouring money back into that specific community. It wasn't purely about profit margins. Ross also once mentioned that one of the reasons he bought Checkers and Rally's is to provide jobs and invest back into the community, giving financial opportunities to the African American community he grew up in. Now, here's where the story gets a little more layered than the highlight reel suggests. Owning franchises means owning locations, not owning the parent companies. Rick Ross is a celebrity most famously associated with Wingstop. Although he owns multiple Wingstop franchises, he does not own shares in the parent company. He's not a shareholder in Wingstop Inc. He's a guy who owns the buildings, the equipment, and the staff at dozens of individual stores flying the Wingstop flag. Same story with Checkers. He owns the restaurants, not the corporate parent. That distinction matters for how the money actually works. Franchise ownership means covering food costs, labor, rent, and royalty fees to the parent company, and keeping whatever's left. Industry estimates on what a single Wingstop location can bring in give you a sense of the math running across dozens of stores at once. A Wingstop franchise owner reportedly earns around $1.25 million in sales and an estimated net profit of $200,000 a year with the franchise. Multiply that kind of profit margin across a portfolio pushing 30 locations, and you start to see how a fast food investment quietly becomes one of the biggest line items in a $150 million net worth. It hasn't all been smooth either. Running dozens of franchise locations across different states means dealing with labor disputes, health code issues, and the occasional lawsuit, the unglamorous side of franchise ownership that never makes it into a music video. Ross has faced legal battles tied specifically to his role as a restaurant franchisee, the kind of behind-the-scenes friction that comes standard with running that many storefronts. But none of it has been enough to slow down the expansion. If anything, the portfolio kept growing through it. By the time you add Wingstop and Checkers together, what you're really looking at is a small regional restaurant company, run day-to-day by people Ross trusts, generating cash whether he's on tour or at home. Rick Ross has a wide array of businesses, but his main ventures include almost 30 Wingstops, several Checkers Rallies, his record label Maybach Music Group, the Rich by Rick Ross grooming product line, and his partnerships with such brands as Luc Belaire and Bumbu Rum. That's 5 separate businesses in one sentence, and we've only really covered 2 of them so far. The restaurants pay for the lifestyle, but the lifestyle is where the empire gets loud, and nothing gets louder than what's sitting in his private hangar. Every empire needs a flex, and Ross's flex lives in a private hangar in Miami. This is where the money stops being invisible spreadsheet numbers and starts being something you can actually watch take off down a runway. The centerpiece is a Gulfstream G550, and Ross didn't rush into buying it. He's talked about spending months deciding before he committed. Ross got a Gulfstream G550 in early 2023, and the rapper mentioned in an interview that he had spent 6 months scouring through different planes before settling on this one. What he actually paid for the jet has never been officially confirmed, but the range thrown around by aviation reporters gives you the scale of the purchase. Ross has not publicly divulged what the acquisition of the G556 set him back, though the cost of that Gulfstream model can reportedly range anywhere from around $15 million to well north of $30 million. And that's before he touched a single bolt of the interior. Because Ross didn't just buy a stock jet and fly off, he rebuilt the thing top to bottom. The paint job alone costs more than most people's houses. Ross clearly spared no expense in customizing the jet inside and out, noting that the exterior paint job alone set him back some $500,000. After all the customization, the valuation on the aircraft climbed well past what he originally paid. As of 2024, Ross's customized Gulfstream G550 was valued at $35 million. The look of the plane is unmistakable now. You couldn't confuse it with anyone else's jet if you tried. The plane now features reflective gold letters, RIC RO, spread across a black gold body, along with the Maybach Music Group logo on its tail. He even gave it a name that ties directly back to his label. This 18-passenger plane was named Maybach Air, inspired by his own music label. And the plane isn't just for show. It's genuinely capable of long-haul flights most private jets can't handle. The spacious heavy jet is able to fly 19 passengers non-stop from New York to Dubai, and as Air Charter Service describes it, with a maximum range of 12,501 kilometers, the G550 links Washington, D.C. with Dubai, London with Singapore, and Tokyo with Los Angeles. That's not a puddle jumper for hopping between Atlanta and Miami. That's a plane built to cross oceans. Ross has framed the jet less as a luxury purchase and more as a business tool, insisting the investment would pay for itself. Ross has described his private jet as a strategic move to triple his wealth. Whether or not that math works out exactly as advertised, the logic tracks with everything else in his portfolio. He treats even his most extravagant purchases as assets that are supposed to generate more money down the line. Then there's the moment that actually pulled this whole story into the headlines recently. Fans noticed Ross moving through a commercial airport terminal like a regular passenger, and the internet did what the internet does, assumed the worst. He shut it down fast, and the explanation traced back to an upgrade, not a downgrade. After a photo appeared to show Ross flying commercial, fans started debating why a rapper with a customized Gulfstream G550 would be moving through the airport with regular travelers. According to Ross, the answer was simple. His private jet was being serviced to include Starlink, the satellite internet system used for in-flight connectivity. He didn't just say it quietly either. He put a price tag on the upgrade so nobody could mistake it for something cheap. He told everyone who was asking where his jet was that it's being updated with Starlink, then clarified, "You know what Starlink is, yeah, that's the $500,000 Wi-Fi. $500,000 just for internet on a plane he already owns outright." That's the kind of number that sounds made up until you remember whose empire we're talking about. And there was somewhere he needed to be while the jet sat in the shop, which is exactly why he ended up on a commercial flight in the first place. Ross also made it clear he had somewhere to be. He said he needed to get back home quickly after attending Escape the States in Colombia, where he linked up to party with Ball Greasy and Trick Daddy. The jet doesn't fly alone either. It's parked in a hangar that's basically a second museum sitting right next to it. Ross opens the doors to his $50 million airplane hangar in Miami for a look at his custom car and motorcycle collection, his array of vintage video arcade games, and his $30 million G550 private jet. Ross gives a tour of the hangar while talking about how he hasn't lost a game of Madden in 9 years, how he spent $700,000 on Starlink internet for his plane, and showing off his rare car collection that includes multiple 1957 Chevys, vintage arcade games, undefeated Madden streaks, classic Chevys parked next to a jet worth tens of millions. It's less a garage and more a monument to everything Ross has decided is worth collecting. That car collection stretches well past a couple of showpieces. Multiple accounts of his holdings describe a fleet deep enough to rival small dealerships. He owns over 100 luxury cars, including Ferraris, Rolls-Royces, and his favorite, a Maybach 650 Landaulet. 100 cars, that's not a hobby, that's inventory. And the hangar isn't just storage, it's part of his actual routine. He houses the jet there permanently, and it sits alongside pieces of the car collection in the same building. We do know that the artist houses his Gulfstream in a private hangar located at Miami's Opa-locka Airport, and Ross also uses that hangar to house several fixtures of his extravagant automobile collection. Compare that against what he told /Gear about the man behind the wheel of that empire, and you get the personality driving all of it. Ross has even taken to stylizing his last name with $signs in lieu of the double S, and famously refuses to ride in a self-driving car, claiming he spent around 6 months deciding which jet best suited his needs. A guy who won't trust a self-driving car, but will trust himself to run a fast food empire, a record label, and a 300-acre estate all at once. That's the contradiction at the center of the brand, hands-on about the things that matter to him, and completely unbothered about flexing the ones that don't. All of that hardware, the jet, the cars, the arcade games, sits on top of the businesses we already covered. None of it exists in a vacuum. The jet gets him to Wingstop openings and Checkers ribbon cuttings. The cars get shown off at the same car and motorcycle show he throws at the mansion every year. It's one connected operation. And that operation runs on more than food and transportation. It runs on a drink cabinet too. Every mogul needs a signature drink, and Ross found his years ago in a bottle most people initially dismissed as a novelty. Luc Belaire is a champagne brand that Ross has been tied to for close to a decade at this point, and it's grown into one of the steadier pieces of his financial picture. His partnership with Belaire Champagne and Bumbu Rum continues to thrive in the premium spirits market. He's not just an ambassador cashing an endorsement check. Reporting on his holdings consistently frames these as equity partnerships, meaning he owns a piece of how the brands perform, not just a fee for showing up in commercials. Bumbu Rum works the same way, a second spirits partnership that runs alongside Belaire rather than competing with it. Between the two, Ross has built a lane in the liquor aisle that keeps generating revenue independent of anything happening in music or fast food. A real estate portfolio anchored by the income-generating Promised Land estate sits alongside spirits partnerships with Luc Belaire and Bumbu, a rap snacks chip line, and the Rich by Rick Ross grooming brand. That's the thing about how this empire is built. It's not one big number, it's a dozen medium-sized numbers stacked on top of each other. Rap snacks, a grooming line under his own name, spirits, franchises, real estate. None of these alone would be a $150 million empire. Together they are, and underneath almost everything sits the label that gave Ross his executive title in the first place. Before he was a restaurant owner or a jet owner, he was a founder. In 2009, Ross founded Maybach Music Group, going on to sign eventual superstars Meek Mill, Wale, and French Montana. That's not a footnote. That's the business that turned him from an artist collecting royalty checks into an executive collecting a percentage of other people's success. The label functions the way any good record label does, as an investment vehicle wrapped around talent. Consider a record label as an investment company in artists. They assist in the production, marketing, and distribution of the music. And in exchange, they claim a portion of the profits of the artist. Every hit Meek Mill or Wale ever had, Ross had a stake in. That's money that flows in, whether Ross himself drops a verse that year or not. The label's reputation has been compared to some of the biggest independent imprints hip-hop has ever produced, sitting in the same conversation as empires built by some of the genre's most famous executives. Maybach Music Group gave him that position, structurally similar to what Jay-Z built with Rockefeller Records and what Master P built with No Limit in the 1990s. The label's commercial output has made it one of the most recognized brands in hip-hop, independent of Ross's own recording activity. That's a serious comparison. Rockefeller turned into a billion-dollar footnote in Jay-Z's overall business story. No Limit turned Master P into one of the wealthiest men in hip-hop during the 90s independent boom. Maybach Music Group gets put in that same sentence, and that's before you even count the music catalog Ross built as a solo artist. Speaking of that catalog, it's not small. Ross broke through with a single that changed his entire trajectory, going from a regional name to a Def Jam signee almost overnight. Between December 1995 and June 1997, Roberts even spent 18 months working as a correctional officer, following his early success and popularity as a rapper and label boss, whose Maybach Music Group launched the careers of Meek Mill, Gunplay, and Wale. Ross shifted his focus to a number of business endeavors. That's the whole arc in one sentence. Prison guard to record label boss to business owner. His debut album alone did the kind of numbers that set up everything that followed. Following the release of Hustlin' in 2006, Jay-Z offered him a multi-million-dollar deal with Def Jam, and Port of Miami debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling 187,000 copies in its first week. That's the foundation the entire empire was built on top of. A rapper who came out of nowhere with a hit single, big enough to get a Def Jam contract on the strength of one song. From there, the albums kept coming, and they kept landing at the top. His first single, Hustlin', has since been followed by a slew of others. BMF, Blowin' Money Fast, Aston Martin Music, and Stay Skimmin' are a few, and he counts Drake and DJ Khaled among frequent collaborators. 6 #1 albums on Billboard. According to reporting on his career totals, cementing him as one of the most commercially consistent rappers of his generation. The Florida rapper has accrued 6 #1 albums on Billboard and is also the CEO of Maybach Music Group, a record label that includes artists such as Meek Mill and Gunplay. But here's the part that actually matters for the Empire conversation. The music was never meant to be the whole picture, even in Ross's own telling of it. The rapping is now one of the smaller lines on his balance sheet. That's a wild thing to say about a 6-time Billboard #1 artist, but it tells you exactly how big the other pieces have gotten. Add up the label, the catalog, the spirits deals, the snack brand, and the grooming line, and you've got a version of Rick Ross that most casual fans never think about. The version sitting in boardrooms deciding equity splits, not the version rapping about Maybachs. He makes money through music, Maybach Music Group, Wingstop and Checkers franchises, spirits partnerships, real estate, and events such as his car show. And that car show deserves its own mention, because it loops right back to where this story started, the mansion. Every year, Ross turns the Promised Land into an actual event venue, hosting the car and motorcycle show right there on the grounds where Evander Holyfield used to train. It's the same property doing triple duty as a home, a business headquarters, and now a recurring entertainment venue that draws crowds from outside the county. That's 5 separate business lines feeding one estimated net worth. And every single one of them traces back to decisions Ross made deliberately, one at a time, over close to 2 decades. None of it happened by accident, and none of it happened overnight. Which brings us to the number itself, what all of this actually adds up to, and where the estimate stands right now. So where does all of this actually land? After the mansion, the acreage, the restaurants, the jet, the cars, the spirits deals, and the label, the figure that keeps showing up across financial estimates is $150 million. As of 2025, Rick Ross maintains an estimated net worth of approximately $150 million. That number isn't pulled from a single source, and it's worth being upfront about how these estimates work. Different outlets tracking celebrity wealth land in slightly different places, depending on how they value the real estate and the franchise cash flow. That figure is an estimate compiled from public reporting. Celebrity net worth pegs him as high as $180 million, while other outlets land closer to $150 million, with some placing him as high as $180 million. One more recent estimate splits the difference entirely. Rick Ross's net worth is estimated at $152 million in 2026. Whatever the exact figure, the shape of it is consistent across every single estimate. Real estate, franchises, spirits, and music, in roughly that order of importance. He built the foundation on a platinum-selling catalog dating back to 2006's Port of Miami. But the modern fortune is a diversified business. A stack of restaurant franchises, 2 spirits partnerships, his Maybach Music Group label, brand licensing, and a real estate portfolio anchored by his sprawling Promised Land estate. And analysts tracking his trajectory don't think the number is done climbing. With touring still active, streaming income still flowing in, and the franchise side of the business still expanding, projections put him on a path toward an even bigger figure by the end of the decade. Analysts predict his net worth could reach $200 million by 2030, supported by ongoing touring revenue, streaming income, and successful business expansions. Now, back to the town itself. Fayetteville didn't ask for a celebrity to move in and start buying up adjoining land, but that's exactly what happened, and the neighbors have had to adjust to it. The area itself was already known for a certain kind of resident before Ross arrived. Fayette County is known for large private estates, low crime rates, and excellent schools. Exactly the kind of place where a man like Rick Ross wants to raise a family and protect his peace. But Ross isn't the only famous name in the neighborhood. When he first announced the land expansion back in 2020, it was another A-list resident of the area who showed up in the comments to co-sign the purchase. Even new Powder Springs resident, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, chimed in on Ross's multi-million-dollar purchase. That's the kind of detail that tells you this isn't some random corner of Georgia. It's become a magnet for exactly the kind of wealth that keeps compounding on itself. The physical scale of the estate has actually earned it a specific title among people who track celebrity real estate. It's not just described as big, it's described as the biggest. Rick Ross's Promised Land is widely recognized as the largest house in Georgia. Multiple write-ups covering the property have arrived at the same conclusion independently, measuring it against every other private estate in the state and coming up with the same answer. Rick Ross's mansion is widely considered the biggest house in Georgia, based on its finished living space, acreage, and overall scale. That title alone tells you something about how far this has gone. This isn't just a rapper flexing a nice house for Instagram. This is a documented, measurable claim to the single largest private residence in an entire state, one that used to belong to a heavyweight champion and now anchors a business empire that stretches into fast food, spirits, aviation, and music. Security around the place has scaled up right alongside everything else, because when you're sitting on the largest private estate in Georgia, you need more than a fence. Rick Ross's Promised Land estate in Georgia is equipped with top-tier security to ensure privacy and peace of mind. The gated entry, 24/7 surveillance system, and controlled access points protect the property, while extensive landscaping and private grounds provide natural seclusion. And people who've actually gotten close enough to see it in person describe an experience that goes past anything you'd expect from a celebrity home tour. One architect who managed to get inside through a local connection described the approach up the driveway in terms usually reserved for royalty, not rap moguls. As he turned onto Evander Holyfield Highway, everything grew quieter, and the long driveway ahead felt like a road into another world. His first thought was simple. This was not a house, it was a kingdom. A kingdom. That's the word that keeps surfacing from fans, from architects, from the reporters who've tried to put a number on all of it. Not a mansion, not an estate, a kingdom with its own economy running underneath it. Restaurants that feed a payroll, a label that develops talent, a jet that connects it all to the rest of the world, and a piece of land big enough that when Ross says he practically owns a town, the acreage and the address on Evander Holyfield Highway back him up. The mother who told him real estate was the way to build wealth turned out to be right. And the kid who worked as a correctional officer at 19 turned out to have the patience to build something that outlasted every album cycle, whatever the final number ends up being when the next estimate rolls in. The pieces on the ground in Fayetteville aren't going anywhere. The gates are still there. The road still carries the old champion's name. And the boss is still, by every account, exactly where he wants to be, running his own kingdom, one wing, one bottle, and one flight at a time.